Same thing that happened to me the first time I took it. It's like, oh, whoa, they're really asking like deep questions. So we'll go ahead and get started. I don't want to hold up anymore. And again, it's going to be recorded. So if you've not met me yet, I'm Jason Scott. I'm the new Beck. And I think this is the second Glad You Asked we've had. And this is again going to be recorded, and Daniel's going to put it out later. So once we trim up the video and get it out to everyone for questions and answers later. I did want to cover with you, I want to share a screen, E&O, before we get started into the actual slides. If you had any transactions with Washburn Law from November 15th until today, December 15th, we need to know. So if you know of anyone that had a transaction, if you had a transaction, we can't search in command by closing a settlement attorney. And there's some paperwork we have to fill out if you had a closing in the last 30 days with that firm. So if you have had one, let us know, please, quickly. And I am going to share a screen, and it's going to be this one. So, hey, Jonathan, it's good to see you here, bud. Can you guys see that? Okay, perfect. So looking at errors and omissions, and a question came up about agency, and it kind of led to a discussion about something I wanted to cover anyway. However, it was in our errors and omissions with our insurance company that covers anything for us if we omit telling a client something, or if we make an error in telling the client something. So we definitely wanted to touch on this, and it's always good practice to have this meeting at least once a year. So as a reminder for anyone, and also if there's any changes since the last time we had the meeting about any of our insurance categories. So looking at errors and omissions, the top, what is the responsibility of the agent? What's the responsibility of the firm? What are the costs for the agent? What are the costs for the firm? If there is an errors in an E&O claim, there are some charges that are incurred up to a certain threshold. So it's up to $5,000, $2,500 to $5,000, depending on the occurrence and the severity of the payout of the claim itself. And again, all 270-ish agents have that coverage as a part of what you pay in your monthly office bill, that we take an annual policy out to take care of everyone. So top claims, this—
Hey, does that basically act like a deductible?
It does. It's exactly what it is. Our deductible is actually $10K. So the agent pays half, we pay half. It's 5 and 5. So if it is a max claim, up to our deductible, which is a couple of million, up to the payouts, a couple of million. So that's why it's up to 5,000 per the agent. So these are the top claim types. And let me clarify something before I go in here. You see repairs on here. Don't use friends, family, and yourself to do repairs. That's not saying you cannot do that. If you're a GC and you have your license and whatnot, and you know how to do that, or if your spouse or family member knows how to do those things and has coverage of their own, that's fine. It's not saying don't do that. This is just saying that these are the top claims and the types that this company that insures us pay out. So top claims: failure to disclose or advise of something. That is number one on the list. That there was hypothetically water damage, say the dishwasher leaked, and we got the floor repaired, we fixed it with the insurance company. However, we did not disclose in the new transaction that, hey, 10 months ago, the seller had a water leak. What I would recommend doing is asking in every listing appointment, hey, have you ever had any water damage or any leaks or anything like that? You know, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase disclose, disclose, disclose. It's always better to disclose something than it to come back later on. So also, if they use their insurance company or their carrier to repair something of water damage or like that, it actually goes on the clue report for the house with homeowners insurance, and that clue report stays with the house. So if you had water damage and say Jonathan sold me his house, and then I go to get a claim on it, his water damage is still already tied to my house. It's already on there, regardless of insurance company. Clue is something that transfers to nationwide for any carrier. So water damage, like recently when the storms came through, remember all the tropical storm and all that rain and everything else, we were out of town that week. However, I came home and rolled up my garage and was all of a sudden sheetrock laying in my garage floor. So I had that fixed. However, if I were to sell my house, I would definitely say to my agent, hey, I did have some water damage when that tropical storm came through. We did have it fixed with our insurance company. So it's easy to put on the RPD. And as an agent, I would put that in the agent comments. There was prior water damage that seller had fixed through their insurance company. That's all you got to do. Also, it's a material fact that if you find out about it, you can't keep it quiet. So septic and sewer, that's another biggie. We're actually working on a claim right now where someone purchased a house on Wednesday. Thursday, their children went to go take a shower for school the next day, and part of the ceiling caved in the finished basement. So you got sheetrock falling on furniture, you've got water coming from the ceiling in your basement, in your living space, and this is day 2 of living there. And that's not your backup of the sewer or septic. It was there before you just bought the house. So if there are, making sure that we disclose about septic and sewer, especially in scenarios like it's on public water, but there is a septic tank, and checking with the health department and getting the proper documents uploaded into your file if it is an actual septic tank. What's happening there often is making sure your clients are aware to ask the right questions to their insurance carriers. For home insurance, they want to ask for the piping coverage to go from the house to the street. Price that out and see how much that coverage is. It's an extra rider on their policy. If they don't have that rider and say that pipe, it's a lead pipe and it rusts from the inside out, if they don't have that rider for the actual pipe to the street, no, it's $9,000 to replace that pipe. The street only covers, if you're on city water, from the street 6 to 8 feet from the road itself. But clearly we know that houses are not 6 to 8 feet from the road in most cases. HOA assessments, that's another one, is not disclosing them. And usually that happens because we've not looked up to see if there are any. And then that would be something we omitted to share. And all of a sudden when the title comes with the house and there's an assessment from the HOA that the buyer was unaware of. Permits and usage, unpermitted space, measuring a house and not knowing if it's permitted or not, usually it's overstating size of a house because of something someone's added. And us as agents, we're trained enough to know, wait, the brick looks a little different. Hey, this siding is not quite the same size, the same color, the same age. Those kind of things are red flags for us to notice when we're at properties to see, hey, what's going on? Ask about permits and then look them up. Also, make sure you look up, if you're in the city limits, look up the city permits and also look up in the county permits, both places for building permits. And you can just Google Alamance County building permits and pull that up. And then it'll show you the links. And if you need the direct links, I'll be glad to ask me for them. I'll get them to you direct. Repairs, again, it suggests not to use your friends, family, yourself. And again, if that happens, it's really just opening the door that if there is a problem and you were the person that fixed it, then you get named in the lawsuit as the person that fixed it. So that's why the recommendation is actually using a vendor from the outside that has their own coverage instead of you being the agent or you being the GC or the spouse or someone who actually did the work on the home themselves. And again, these are just the top claims they see, not necessarily all of the claims they see. These are the top payouts. So next would be bodily injury or property damage, meaning they were at the house and they fell down the stairs. In workman's comp, it's called slips, trips, and falls. That's the number one payouts. Are either something happening, like there's something at your house that happened during an inspection. Like you were at an inspection and maybe the inspector we've had fall through the roof of a home. They were in the attic, fell through the sheetrock, and now you've got a hole in the roof from the bedroom where the person stepped through, or they didn't see the board in the attic and put their foot through the ceiling. Escrow accounts, not having enough in escrow or not even telling the client that there has to be escrows. And again, there's a couple of things that are in place to catch those, like your attorney catches it. They sign off on it on their HUD or their ALTA statement. So, but they're signing so many documents, they don't realize how many things they're signing, what everything is. There can be an overload. Sometimes we also find that the escrow account is what happens on the taxes, that if they've not been paid, the buyer actually gets a credit from the seller at settlement for their portion. And then the tax bill comes and they're like, I'm not paying for all this. But if you go back and look on the ALTA, we actually had that this week, they did get a credit for the seller's portion of those taxes. So there was not enough money in escrow. However, the buyer did receive funds at settlement to cover the seller's portion of taxes in advance. So a lot of people forget the in advance part, like, oh, I got this money as a credit, I have to pay it now. Solar panels. Big thing with solar panels is, one, they're very expensive, and two, who owns them? So we're seeing a lot of renewable energy and greenhouses and that kind of thing, that's perfectly fine. It's great. It's fantastic programs out there to help assist with payment. There often are installation of solar panels that get paid off over time, and they have a lien on the house for the solar panels. So the moment you're at a house that has solar panels, you need to find out who owns them. If they've been paid for, if there's a lien on the house, if the company that installed them are the ones that actually still own them, is that going to transfer to the new buyers? So listing a home, you need to find all those things out. And also on the buying side, make sure you find those things out. Wire fraud. Our policy does not cover wire fraud. Now, we do have an additional policy in addition to our regular E&O that does cover wire fraud. So we actually have two policies that cover you, that one for errors and omissions and one for wire fraud itself. I actually personally know an agent here in Alamance County that it was not her fault, had nothing to do with her. However, the day of settlement, the paralegal's email got ghosted and added an extra letter. And they sent, hey, the sellers were out of state. They were selling their property here. They had already moved. They said, hey, the sellers aren't going to make it today. They've decided just to have this wired to their account. And $80K got wired to an account that they're never going to get back. $80K. So again, wire fraud is not covered as our E&O. KW Central does take out an additional policy that does cover it. I will send out via Daniel a disclaimer at the bottom of your email. That disclaimer does not cover you if you have it. What it does, though, is bring awareness every time you send an email to a client where wire fraud is a potential. So I would recommend, as your BIC, to put it at the bottom in your signature that, Keller Williams Central will never ask you for wiring information, your accounts, anything like that. And if anyone does, contact your agent immediately. So between Daniel and I, we will get that out to all of you to add to your signature line. Again, that is not if it's on there, not stopping what's happening, it's raising awareness. So it's one more thing. If you notice in all the contracts out there that they've added great big red block checks in July of this year when they updated contracts about wire fraud. It was on the agency agreement, it's on the listing agreement, it's on the offer to purchase. So there are warnings about wire fraud in every North Carolina document containing the purchase and sale of a home. So because it's so rampant. Any questions so far about that? Let me see. I see a question. Let's see. Do you have an approximate price difference from that front pipe and accessible crawl versus slab? Sarah, I do not know that. I do know that someone just paid $8,000 to replace their pipe from their house to the street. That was not covered in their insurance. Someone that closed my second day here.
Do you remember
So
the age of the house?
it was 78.
Was it galvanized?
It was iron, like an iron, the old iron, black wrought iron pipes, the big fat ones. And it had rotted from the inside out. And the other thing with that one I'll share was on the home inspection report, they said this floor was soft around the toilet, that was not normal to have that further inspected. Second place on the home inspection report, they actually denoted on the clean out spout adjacent to the house on the outside that there was water standing in that area, and that was abnormal to have that tested further. And we as in the client, we accepted a few $1,000s in lieu of any repairs at settlement. And they were looking like, well, why didn't nobody tell me about this? And part of it is, there's a reason home inspectors say, this is not normal, check it out. And unfortunately, in this scenario, it actually was something. Turns out the seller in that case had that very same problem more than a month before and had that fixed. To his knowledge, he had had put on a new roof, and he had that same leaking issue, and he called the plumbers out immediately to fix it, to see what's wrong. The plumber said, I think it's from your new roof. And so they did some other work in the house, work on the sinks and leaks here, and put in a new spigot on the outside, whatnot. However, so the seller did the work they thought was to be done to remedy the problem. But then again, 30 days later, it happened for a second time on the new buyers. And so the seller did what they thought, other than disclosing it. That would be my recommendation in those private comments, to have said, hey, they did have a prior leak that was, professionally taken care of by a plumber and a roofer. So unfortunately, the plumber didn't run a camera up through the pipe to see that it was rotting. But yes, depends on how long the pipe is, how deep it is. I just had another one before I came over here with KW, where how a deck will settle and with age, the weight of the concrete, and it's off. And they had brought out a company to pump foam into it to raise it back up to level the deck in the back, the patio in the back. Well, the original builder of the house in the early 80s did not bury the pipe deep enough. So when they went in to puncture the ground to put in the foam to raise the patio, it raised just like the plan was. However, it punctured the sewer pipe, and they sprayed foam into the sewer pipe because they weren't deep enough to code. And no one would have known that, 35 years later. However, all that piping had to be replaced. I know that was $14,000 for that one. Just so you know. Let's see. Good questions. Thank you for asking. Top scenarios that produce highest percent of claims. So per transaction, are agents buying houses and flipping them? Are agent sales and transactions? Are estate sales, meaning we don't have all the signatures, or someone 6 months after the fact says, Jason was the executor and I didn't agree to that because we didn't have all the proper paperwork to say that that was okay. So these two scenarios are the highest percent of claims per transaction. So these pay out the most. So another one, dual agency. And that's why we even brought this up. The question came up in the shift class about dual agency. So there's several spots in the transaction that folks get asked about dual agency, and you as an agent have a chance to explain dual agency. So when's the first one? You're on mute, Sarah. I saw your mouth moving, but
I said first substantial contact.
yeah, WWREA. It's the first time we ever talk about agency, right? And we check the boxes of all the scenarios. We explain them, but we also check the boxes of this is the type of scenario we're in at the moment as I show you this house, or that we talk about real estate with you. Where's the second spot we see it? We talk about agency. Y'all are quiet. The agreement, when they hire you, right? There's literally a spot for them to decide, I want this type of agency, I want that type of agency, I want designated agency. So those check boxes, we shouldn't be filling out for them. That's our shot for them to decide. We've explained agency to them at WWREA. And then when we actually got hired via the listing agreement or the buyer agency agreement, they actually then signed off on, this is the type of agency representation I would want. Well, then the scenario in the shift was, if you're looking at houses and the buyer said, hey, I would like to buy a house just like that one over there. And you as the agent say, oh, you know what? That house sitting on the market, but I'll go talk to them and ask them if they'll sell it to you. And you go contact them and say, hey, Mr. Smith, I've got a buyer for your house. Would you like to sell it? Mr. Smith says, well, yeah, how much? You give Mr. Smith a CMA, you've whipped out a WWREA to explain agency, which you are in some territory there that whether you're wading into it or know it or not, of representing folks inadvertently. If your original client did not agree to dual agency, you could be treading that water that could sink you. Thus the scenarios that produce highest percent of claims. When someone raises their hand and says, I didn't know she was representing that person as well as myself. When did that happen? I didn't agree to that. And then we have to produce paperwork that says, hey, here's where you signed off on it. And what we often see is we just said, hey, here, Eastside, we were in the speed market, remember? We just shot all that paperwork over at them and said, click all these boxes, I'll make the offer for you. And we didn't explain all those boxes. We had them click in and sign it. What I would recommend, every scenario, I would never not do this, it's free money. Say, Sarah, I got this buyer that wants to buy 123 Main Street. I'll refer it to you if you go talk to him. I want 25% of that, or 30%, or 20%, whatever I charge Sarah. That's up to me what I charge Sarah on a referral. Sarah then, as a referral, pays me, the agent, and I still get paid for my client. So I would recommend you always refer that out and just get the kickback of the money. Kickback's a bad word. If you get the payout of the referral to someone rather than you sliding the thin ice of dual agency and not having explained it well. The other issue is, if your client said dual agency was fine, and all of a sudden you have 123 Main Street and your dual agency, what if you can no longer advise either client, right? You become the mediator of signing paperwork back and forth. You can't advise, you can't be the fiduciary that handles every transaction like you normally would. You have to become neutral because you know information potentially about both sides. Then that's the high percent of emissions and payouts, is when, well, she or he knew I only had X amount of money for my down payment, or he and she knew that I was looking for this in a house. And then that's dual agency is where you get risky with that. So number one transaction that costs the most with insurance is selling something to or for an attorney. And I know you find that hard to believe, but that's one of them. Another one is agents giving loans, like, hey, I'll give you $500 for your down payment. And then trying to collect on it later on and saying, well, the agent didn't tell me I was getting a loan from them. They said they were going to give it to me. That's just not good practice financially if you're pretending to be bank during a transaction. Examples. There are fair housing folks out there testing anonymously from HUD. So clear example would be a 55 and older community. Make sure that if someone calls you and starts asking questions, you don't just haphazardly answer something. And just be aware of there are folks out there that make a living off of suing. So I called and asked about 55 and older communities, and the answer was a non-fair housing answer. I get the attorney to then write a letter to your firm about your non-fair housing practices. So just be aware of that. Another one we're going to do later on, but it's Long Island Divided. If you have not watched that documentary, it's worth the 47 minutes of your life. It will change how you practice real estate. Everything in me swears it will. Long Island Divided was, think of a Dateline show, 60 Minutes, that kind of thing. They did a 3-year study with more than 300 people anonymously, I can't say that today, anonymously looking at housing on Long Island. And you'd have 2 people, same clothes, same job, same car, same lender, same everything, and go to a firm and say, I want to see houses around West Burlington. And then person 1 would say, well, those are not really good schools over there. You probably want to be in North Burlington or South Burlington. You want to be in the Southeast area. Well, they didn't say that to the other person. And then therein lies the issue with unfair housing practices. So we'll do Long Island Divided. It's a fantastic class that we do statewide. And I actually am one of the instructors for it. So Long Island Divided, you will enjoy as a upcoming class we'll do together. So other one, biggie, with HOAs starting bylaw changes in their documents. Literally, the HOA I live in is now soliciting up to 75% of our votes to stop rentals in our development. So I do know McIntosh already has one. A lot of HOAs had them and we're not enforcing them. So what's happening is all these short-term rentals, Airbnbs, Mr. B&Bs, Verbos, all these other things out there that are putting temporary rentals on the markets. HOAs do not like them. And they are changing their bylaws. And so what's happening is we're selling a house in a neighborhood to an investor for them to do short-term rentals. And then all of a sudden we're finding out that there is an HOA bylaw against short-term rentals. And we just represented that house and not updated our registered deed search for HOA docs. There's also another one in Raleigh right now that's part of a state lawsuit where they came together and outlawed the Airbnbs in the development. So please know that that will be an ongoing struggle for all of us statewide. You'll hear much more about that, just know. Let's see, what's next? Waivers. This one is worth $5,000 to you. So write it down, write it down, write it down. If you offer a home warranty with the purchase of a home, you have to do all 4 of these. It's not 1, 2, and 3, and I didn't do number 4. Or it's not, I did 2, 3, and 4, I didn't do number 1. If you do all 4 of these and you have a claim in E&O towards you or against you, this will waive your deductible up to $5,000. So again, write it down, write it down, write it down. If number 1, you offered a home warranty, they waived it in the professional service disclosure, or they purchased the home warranty. That's number one. Purchased it or they waived it in the disclosure. So that's something we're going to ask for in your files going forward in command. Inspection, they either performed one or again waived one, and it's on the professional services disclosure. You actually used an NC2T, and in North Carolina with us, that's what you would have used for almost all of your transactions. Rarely you'll use an attorney drafted OTP, but there is such thing. Those two scenarios, you use a 2T offer to purchase or an attorney drafts one, and there is a seller RPD on the property that both parties have signed off on. So if all four of these things are done and there is a claim, there is up to $5,000 waived. So that's a biggie. And it's not two of these things and two not done. It's not one of these things and three not. It is if we have proof of all four, the insurance company will give us a waiver of deductible up to $5K. So, and this is on the buying side, and I use the professional services to execute this. And that's where you're going to document that we offered a home warranty and they waived it. We offered an inspection and they waived it. We used the 2T, and here an RPD is attached. So any question on that one? That's the slide's worth $5,000 to you. Literally. Yes.
Is this kind of related to a push to get people to keep their files in order?
Imagine that. I would love for, yes, it makes it easier on us to, if there's a case that comes about, and if your file, that's the insurance company saying, if you do this to help keep your files in order, we can actually stand on something that say, well, look, we offered a home warranty and they waived it. You know, we asked for an inspection and they waived an inspection. We suggested one rather. You know, we used the 2T offer to purchase, which is as is. You bought it in the condition you saw it the day you visited. And here's the disclosure the seller provided to you about the house. So if all four of these, yes, it is a way of the insurance company to have something tangible to fight on behalf of you and us. So, and yes, it's good to have files in order. I'm already gray. Y'all don't need to help me anymore. So, okay. Here's the other thing is, when do we report it? So the moment you as an agent get served anything from the commission, and all of us old schoolers, we always used to talk about getting a brown envelope. It's like, oh my gosh, you never want a brown envelope. There is no such thing as a brown envelope anymore. It comes in an email packet that's sent to you from the commission that says, we have received this complaint about this transaction from this person. We would like to see the documents on X, Y, and Z within 14 days. The moment you receive that, I will receive it also as your BIC. And we have 14 days from the moment we receive it to answer. I have to call and report this to PBI Group, to the insurance company. It may not even be picked up as a claim. We just have to call and report it. And then we'll respond in that 14 days. And I do that with you. I've done 5 or 6 since I've been here, less than a month with people. I hold your hand along with it. It's not something you have to go through on your own. However, keeping good files, keeping good records, having screenshots of text conversations. One person has actually had to go back to Verizon and get phone records from March of 22 to give to the commission in defense of a conversation they had. So keeping records of conversations, or if you have a phone conversation or if you have a text conversation, follow it up with an email that says, hey, per our conversation today, X, Y, and Z. There you have a paper trail of it. rather than having to dig through it 9 months later. You can just catch it right in an email. So the moment you get the package from the commission, or the moment someone says KW Central is going to be sued for this, or I'm seeing attorney about this transaction, blah, 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 blah. Anytime you get disciplinary proceedings, you get a commission complaint brought against you, or you have knowledge of something that could potentially turn into a claim, you need to call me directly, day or night, weekend or whatever, and we need to talk about that if you think it's going to turn into something. Because again, we need to call and report that, even if it is not going to be a claim, they want to know about it, because if we sit on that scenario, say that roof caved in and we didn't call it in. If we did not do that, and then 3 months from now, they come back and say, my agent didn't tell me about this leak. I didn't know about this leak. I didn't have this covered in my plan. I had an inspection. They didn't tell me to have that checked out. And if we did not actually report it to the insurance company could deny it. And then who's paying for all that if we're at fault? All of us. All of us. Because all of us pay for it when our premium would go up. So anytime you get a brown envelope in your email, anytime you get a demand received from an attorney, you get a letter or a threat from your client of a potential claim, let's talk about it. So any questions on that one? That's a biggie. And me calling and registering it does not trigger automatically a claim itself. It's just reporting the actual incident. So that one clear as mud. Average cost of a claim. You see that right there? $30K. And if it's to do with water, sewer, septic pipes, it's almost always higher than $30K. This one we're dealing with right now, which it was $8,000 for the pipe, and it's $18,000 for the sheetrock and the paint and the carpet and the furniture that the sewage leaked on out of the pipe and everything else. And it's day 2 of owning your new home. So think about that. $30K. So any questions on these? All right, that's it for E&O. The other thing, some folks joined. Happy to see all of you. If you have any questions about Washburn Law, I have to bring that up again, like we started from the beginning. If you have anything with Washburn Law within the last 30 days, I need to know it. So we can fill out some paperwork. So any questions while we're all here together? Glad You Ask is going to the Thursday of the 2nd and 4th weeks of the month at 2 o'clock. So we'll have a Burlington meeting 1st and 3rd, a Hillsborough meeting 2nd and 4th, and then Glad You Ask is a 2nd and 4th opportunity for Burlington to have another touch. So there'll be a Burlington touch every week, and then there'll be a Hillsborough touch 4 times as well, and it can be twice in the same week. So, and it won't always be the same information. I'm not repeating classes at same meetings. So if you won't, it won't be redundant that you all heard the same thing Tuesday and Thursday if you join. I know this is a little bit redundant from Hillsborough this week, but we didn't finish because of a training class with command. So anybody, anything? I see some Hillsborough people. I'm excited to see you all. I promised you I'd finish this, covering this. So, all right, if nothing else, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you all. And please know, if you need something signed, send it to the BIC email address. I return them as fast as I can get them quickly. I don't want you sitting on paperwork, so I always try to get it to you as fast as I can. And shoot that to brokerincharge832@gmail.com. The quickest way is if you just put it into your, like a coming soon. If you go ahead and have your person sign it, you sign it, me sign it, all in the same page. Otherwise, I have to print it and sign it hard sign, or either I have to move it into my own DocuSign and get it over to you. But still use that. Use your BIC hotline, use the BIC email for signatures. And you can always call me directly, 336-327-0002. And I'm in the office just about 5 days a week, nights and days. Right, Andy?
And mornings and lunches.
I'm usually leaving around 7 or 8. So if you're a nighttime person, I'm here. And I do answer my phone if you call, I promise. Or
Would
if
you
I can't,
repeat
I
your
will
phone
call you
number?
back. 336-327-0002. And that's straight to me. So, and like I say, if I don't call you back, I'll text. Somebody texted me last night at 11:30, and I happened to still be up, so I did answer. But it was something that was urgent. So,
Appreciate you, buddy.
all right, thank you all. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.